was kind of disappointed because I wanted to do the video of Ringo Starr in that song, It Don't Come Easy, you know it don't come easy, and I just couldn't get it to work. But it don't come easy, does it? Where are you on your own spiritual journey? Where are you? Because this is one of the timeless stories. If we look at it a little deeper, if we look at it on a surface level, Jesus, he's baptized, he's on this tremendous high, then he goes out into the desert, he's tempted 3 times, he comes back, or he goes through the other side, and he starts to preach and teach the word. But if we look at it, this is one of the timeless stories of Jesus. I talk about Jesus modeling what a human life is supposed to look like. And Jesus is modeling, Jesus, the Son of God himself, modeling the pain and the suffering that unfortunately is required to become a spiritually wise person. So Jesus is about 30 years old. And he hasn't really said much of anything to this point. He hasn't really done much of anything. Because frankly, when you're about 30 years old, you really don't have anything, you really don't have a whole lot to say. Do you? I mean, you haven't really done anything. You haven't been there and done that. I said last week that all my mentors that I look up to, that I go to for advice, are older than I am. When you're 30, you're just getting it together. I mean, there are exceptions, of course. There are people that in their 20s maybe go through some terrible tragedy, but you don't develop the 1,000-yard stare when you've done nothing but just sort of try to grow up. So Jesus goes from this incredible high. God affirms him and says, "This is my son, the beloved. Listen to him." And then he goes into the desert. I'd just like you to think about maybe where are the deserts in your life, or where are the times that you've been through a time of drought? And what do we do with those times of drought? Those times where you've lost someone, or you've lost something that's important to you. And what do you do with that? What have you done with that? You notice that Jesus doesn't willingly go into the desert. He's led into the desert. In Mark, it says the Spirit drove him into the desert. You think about your own life. Did you ever just decide, I think I'm going to walk into the desert? I haven't. We have to be driven into the desert. And unfortunately, this is just the way it works. This is where we learn. But we can do a couple of different things with it. Depends on what we do and how we face that. But this is not a new story. This is timeless. This is Ulysses from Homer's The Iliad and the Odyssey. So 800 years before Christ, Ulysses leaves and goes to fight the Trojan War, and he's just a young man full of vinegar and not much smarts. And even in this story, he's forced to wander the earth for 10 years being tortured. And the upshot is, after the 10 years of torture, he comes back to Penelope, but he comes back a wise man. It's in the desert, even though we don't like the desert, that we face our inner demons. For a more modern example,
Step down the dark path. peace. Fasting. A Jedi uses the Force for knowledge and defense. Never attack.
But tell me why I
No,
can't.
no, there is no why. Nothing more will I teach you today. Clear your mind of questions.
There's something not right. I feel cold.
That place is strong with the dark side of the Force. A domain of evil it is. And you must go.
What's in there?
Only what you take with you. Your bad rifles. You will not need them.
So fast forward one or click forward. I play movie clips to amuse you. When I see that you're starting to fall asleep, that's how I get you back in. It's very clever, diabolical. Don was telling me this morning, the first person that's used that screen so much. There's a secret plan behind it. I was talking with a member of our congregation recently who gave me permission to mention this. But he said when he was starting to go through his desert and things were starting to fall apart, it was like sitting in a counter and there's a glass of milk on the edge. And as you sit and watch, the milk glass starts to slowly fall, and you want to reach out and grab it. And you try to reach out and grab it, but you just can't be fast enough. And you just sit and watch as the glass tumbles and falls to the ground and smashes. In my own experience, I tried to avoid going into the desert. And when I was about 40, I went into my own desert. And I don't know if any of you have had this experience, but have you ever had something really, really awful happen to you? A series of events, a time in your life that you look back and you say, thank God for all the misery that I went through. I was married, I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but I was married for a long time and thought that I had a marriage that was what marriage was supposed to look like. I got married, I guess probably because all my friends were getting married and it was about the time you're supposed to get married. I picked the wrong person for the wrong reasons, but I thought that, I didn't know any better. And it was through a series of events where I got sent by the Navy off, and there was anger and separation and ultimately infidelity. And my heart was literally broken. And I went through a year or more of the most excruciating agony. I almost went into the hospital for pneumonia. My immune system wouldn't work. I don't know if any of you have ever had not necessarily that scenario, but just a season of your life where this sort of thing happens. And I was at rock bottom in the sense that I was at a place where literally I couldn't do anything about it except sit there and wallow from it. And when you're in the middle of it, it seems like there's no way out, doesn't it? But if you have to sit with it, because you don't have any other choice, then you can really learn from it. And the message to me, the good news in this story, is that the Son of God himself went into the desert. If you try to think about a God that understands and knows what you're going through, that to me is a good news part of this story. I had another friend who did not, I would say, want to have... It takes courage to sit there and learn the lesson. It takes courage, this is what we call faith. It takes courage to hold on through times like that, doesn't it? It takes courage not to have a drink, not to take a pill, not to go on a trip. This is why Jesus says that the poor are closer to God. Because the poor don't have an option. The poor can't take a drink, take a pill, or go on vacation. They just got to sit there and deal with it. Here, the temptation of Jesus, if we understand this, is the devil comes to him and he's hungry. And the devil comes to Jesus and says, turn the stones into bread. In other words, end this scenario, end the misery, end the agony. You can do it like that. And Jesus decides not to do it. You're poor. You have no money. I'll give you all the riches, all the kingdoms on earth. Jesus says no. You're rejected by the religious establishment, your family, your tradition, your culture, your society, everything. If you are the Son of God, take yourself to the top of the temple and show them who you really are. And he decides not to do it. And he says, away, Satan. In other words, he's deciding to stay in there and learn, is the way I take this. I had another friend who had a terrible loss. And I didn't want to force myself on him or anything like that, but I wanted to know that I was willing to listen, happy to listen. He had lost someone profoundly close to him. And I asked him about it. I said, how do you feel about that? How are you dealing with that? And he said, oh, she was a tough old coot. I said, okay. I said, are you kind of like, is there anything more there? Or well, we're just doing the best we can. We're just muddling along and we're going to be just fine. We must miss her a lot. Absolutely we do. Getting ready to head over to Europe. We're just going to take a trip and get away. I don't know whether he dealt with that. I don't know whether he dealt with that or not. I don't know whether he sat with that ever or not. But it takes courage to sit with it and ask, where is God taking me in this journey? Where is God? What is God teaching me in this? And this is the path to spiritual maturity. And it's what I think this story is about. Let me have one more. As I kind of wrap this up. I love the road less traveled. And it just reminds me that it takes courage to take that road. To sit in your pain and just keep going. But I promise it is worth it. As I sort of wrap this up, I think the good news here for me is God knows exactly how you feel. And if we go through life, we're going to encounter these periods where we're in the desert. And it's just going to happen. And unfortunately, it's in the desert that we learn and we grow closer to God, not in the good times. And the story is, it's recounted in Mark, after Jesus goes through the desert, goes through this period, angels descend and minister to him. I talked to some people in this congregation who are going through rough periods, and there are a few people in this congregation who are barely hanging on. Hang on. It will get better. There will be a lesson at the end of the tunnel. God knows exactly what you're going through. And the riches that you find on the other side are more than any amount of money could possibly buy. This is the pearl of great price. This is the lost coin. This is the lost sheep. This is one of those 12 essential messages that I talked about that we have to learn. Amen.